My friends sometimes ask me how I plant my rose garden. And now it's February, it's still cold outside, everything is asleep, so I think that it's perfect time to share with you my experience. Maybe you are planning your own rose garden. So let me show you how I did it. I'm Sonia and welcome back. I've planted more than 200 roses in this garden and I add every year new varieties. I simply love them. When we bought this house years ago, there were barely any roses here. And I remember that we actually bought this house because of the garden, as I always wanted to create a dreamy rose garden. But originally, I thought it will be easier than it was. I actually started to plant flowers and roses and put beds where I simply thought they should be, like here in front of the winter garden. But what I lacked at the beginning was a proper plan where I wanted to put all my rose beds. So I hired a garden planner, a designer, and she put a plan for me, which was wonderful. But I could not implement everything and her ideas because I haven't had money for that. But it gave me confidence of what I want to do and kind of experimenting fun. And I started to adapt her plan into my own way, like here in my mini English rose garden. This part of the garden did not exist 3 years ago. It was neglected and uninspiring. And I wanted to have here something on low maintenance but beautiful because I have a full time job and do not have that much time to spend in the garden. And for sure, I wanted to have a lot of roses here. The S shaped hedge was originally here around the cherry tree when we moved in, but it was boxwood and it was struggling here. So we decided to replace it by this very small variety of yew that stay small, and it gave the original starting point for the other ornaments in my English rose garden. I always loved books on English garden design or English gardening shows that they show on the TV here in Germany. And I was inspired to put some small piece of this very charming design into my garden as well. But first, I had to tackle one very important point in my garden, and this was this fence that you see in the background. And it was actually one of the very important points that the garden designer taught me. When you plan and realize your garden plan, go from the back to the front, but fix the hardware first. So in my case, it was the fence because you should plant your flowers only after you have fixed that. Otherwise, it would be hard for the workers to repair your fence when the plants are already in. When I fixed the fence, I ordered my yew hedges online. And this is because of the fact that in the usual garden center, they do not have that many plants and they are usually a little bit more expensive than if you order them in an online nursery. So you may check on that if you want to plant something similar to my garden. Before starting to plant the yews, I had to find out how to plant them and what kind of ornament I want to create in my garden. So I put a piece of paper on the ground just to see how it will look like. And you see on the picture that I made at that point of time that I simply trusted my gut feeling and saw how it will look like and then decided thereafter. So very good to visualize before you start planting in that many plants. For my roses, I've been eyeing for a long time wonderful rose, Guirlande d'Amour, and you know it from my previous video, so check on that as well if you want. And Guirlande d'Amour is a repeating flower rose, very resistant and absolutely bee friendly. I also added lavender below the rose and underplanted this rose with it, and catmint. At the moment, it's only lavender because the catmint did not survive the first winter. And this is how it is. You have to experiment. Sometimes not every plant or rose will go in a certain spot, but then you can replant it, not an issue. When I buy roses, I like to go through books and magazines and rose catalogs. They are so wonderful. But I very rarely buy them from these catalogs before I've seen a rose in person. The photos in the catalogs may look very nicely and they are polished and the colors are wonderful. But sometimes I want to see the growth habit before I buy a rose. I want to see the color in person and how big the flowers really are. For this garden, I bought actually the standard roses already in the spring because I was familiar with the roses. And the rest of them I bought in June when I went to the nursery and could put together the colors and saw how they look like. In the end, the most important thing is that you love your garden, love your roses. And it needs to be a rose that you want to have, the color you want to have, you feel comfortable with, and that gives you energy when you see the rose or just smell the rose. Here in my garden, I also made a mistake. I put a rose called Verena. I like her so much. It's so wonderful. But it was kind of a mistake to plant it here because it needs first a little bit more sunshine, and second, the hue hedge is too high for this small rose. So I already replanted it. Now I planted other roses here in the back, and for you it's just simply try everything and experiment with your roses. The most important thing is the sunshine at least 5 hours a day, and then I wish you good luck. It will work, I'm quite sure, because if you love roses, then they will love you back. Now, after a few years of gardening and planting roses and preparing everything, I'm so happy that I've planned at the beginning and experimented. And I wish you all the best for your rose garden, and I see you next time.